guys, welcome back to my Practically Imperfect Life. Today is going to be the first in a series of videos where I'm going to give you an honest review of what we've thought of our curriculum we used this year. Back in May of last year, I told you all of the things we had chosen for this year, but I felt like it would be worthwhile to revisit those things now as we are in our fourth quarter and let you know exactly how those things have gone for us. What have we liked or disliked about them? What are things we have learned along the way or things I would do differently if I could do it all over again? Now, I'm going to be talking about different subject categories in each of these videos. Today, I'm going to talk about history and social studies. So the Whirlwind World History course my son is doing in his 10th grade year, and the Government Econ Personal Finance Combo course my daughter is doing as an 11th grader. Now, since I'm on the topic of history, I definitely want to introduce you to today's video sponsor, and that is History by Mail. This is a wonderful add-on resource that we have been introducing as a part of our history and social studies courses, and we plan to continue using next year as my son moves into learning more about U.S. history. And I will share more about History by Mail later on in this video. I'll start with the Whirlwind World History course. Again, this comes from Guest Hollow, and it is what I would call a non-traditional history course. A traditional course would have one textbook, and then you would take quizzes or tests or have a variety of assignments that you would do. This is more of an immersive learning experience. Yes, there is an online textbook that is included in this course. And yes, there is a workbook that you can print off and have your student use. But it has so much more than that. It gives you a weekly schedule, and on that weekly schedule, there are various books that your student will read from. There is a very long book list of options that you can choose. Different things are assigned on different days or on different weeks as you go through different history topics. There are also links to a huge variety of both full-length movies and documentaries and shorter YouTube videos. It has options for music you can listen to, craft projects your student can do if you have a very hands-on learner. There are cooking assignments as well, and different reference books that your student can glean additional information from. Just lots that you can do. The online textbook is quite excellent. It's written by Jennifer Guest from Guest Hollow. She did a wonderful job with this. It covers everything from early civilization all the way up through modern times throughout the world. And I really have liked how she has put topics together. Obviously, we're going chronologically, so we are discussing different time periods, but as far as looping together things in an understandable way. For example, my son recently was learning about trade and globalization and what basically happened as Europe really branched out around the world and started to create different colonies and different trading routes, how that impacted not only Europe, but the different countries that they were going to and the impact of that. We also looked at reformations, all of the different changes that were happening in religious circles and how that impacted life and politics and the development in new colonies as well. It's just very well done. There are a lot of embedded videos within the textbook. So he'll read for a while, and then there might be a video for him to watch, read some more, and there might be a second video or a graphic. I will say that we found that oftentimes the embedded videos would add quite a bit to that reading time. He'd have a certain amount that he was supposed to read on a given day, and then when you add in the videos, that did, of course, increase the time to go through that. And I encouraged him to go ahead and watch all of those videos. I figured if she thought it was important enough to include into that online textbook, it was important for him to watch. Now, because of that, I started to be more selective in which of the supplemental YouTube videos I had him do. There might be anywhere from 1 to 5 recommended on a given day, and oftentimes we would cut it down and maybe have just one additional supplemental video or ones from particular YouTube channels that I felt were giving the best information. There were also some that were just interesting little tidbits that really I felt like added on to what he was reading about. It wasn't a video about the exact same thing he just read. It was more new information. And that just took a little bit of extra time for me as his teacher, looking at those options and kind of picking and choosing what things I wanted to have him do. Now, the workbook is very long. It's a big workbook, but it is beautifully done. There are graphics and illustrations included in it. There are notebooking pages. There is, for each week, there are different map work pages where he has like a different mapping assignment where one page is like a reference page and the other one is one that he's filling out. And then there are questions that come mostly from the textbook itself. It will tell you right there on the workbook pages which section of the reading those questions pertain to. It made it really easy for me to assign that to him. If he knew he was reading a section on, a certain leader, he knew he was answering the questions in the workbook that were on that given week and on that particular topic as well. So I have felt like the workbook has been a really valuable tool for making sure that he's understanding what he's reading, and it's been something that I can grade and use, to help assign a grade for this course. Also included in the workbook, there are occasional questions where it says think but don't answer, and then it will give him some sort of a prompt. And I believe it's meant for something where he's just supposed to, again, think about it or maybe do a group discussion. What I have done for that is taken questions like that and I have used them as prompts for his narration journal. I love narration journals, especially for courses like this that are a bit non-traditional, as a way of seeing what he's capturing from what he is, reading and watching, and making sure that, he is kind of retaining that information and able to then present it back. So I really do enjoy narration journals. What I've done is had a weekly prompt for him. Instead of doing a narration journal every day, once a week, he's got a prompt he's got to answer. And a lot of times I pull it from those think and discuss questions from the workbook. If there isn't a question that week that I feel would be a good prompt, instead I might ask him to give a summary of main ideas from a reading assignment he had from that week, or to tell me 10 interesting facts that he has learned from his different reading selections. So that is the bulk of what has kind of constituted his grade. I've graded the workbook, I've graded his narration journal, and then different projects as well. Now, one thing about a curriculum like this, where you have this schedule outline that gives you all of these different options you can choose from, is that it can feel very overwhelming at first. If you're brand new to Guest Style, I remember the first time I purchased one from them, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much here. How am I going to pare it down? And I tried to do all of the things with my kids, and you just can't unless you want to spend the entire day on this one subject. You have to pick and choose. And as you get to know what works well for your kids, that gets easier. For example, my son has no interest in listening to music selections, so I just skip over that part. He doesn't like super artsy projects where it's paint this or draw that or make this cute thing. He does enjoy making models, and so when there are optional assignments where we're creating 3D models, we will do things like that. There are also quite a number of cooking projects where you are making dishes from either different parts of the world or from different times in history. Sometimes he makes those, sometimes I will go ahead and make them and just let him try them. And that has been a lot of fun, being able to just kind of taste test different types of things, trying our hand at making handmade dyes and unique foods. So that has been really how we've utilized the options for the different hands-on projects. We've done model building, we've done an awful lot of cooking. That is really what he enjoys. But beyond the videos and the crafts, I have to say that it's the additional books that I feel really make this course special. Could you do this course and just use the online textbook? Yes. But I feel like you would be missing out of a huge piece of what this curriculum can offer. When you purchase it, you get a schedule and a book list, and it gives you all of the different options for different books. It tells you how important it feels that those books are to the curriculum. It gives them a ranking. So books labeled 1 or 2, they feel are ones you should really try to do. Ones that are like a 4 are more like a reference book, so not something you absolutely need to have, but could have. And then it tells you which weeks in the curriculum you're going to use them. And that is nice if you don't want to purchase all of the books, if you want to get them from a library, if you want to find them on Audible, if you want to borrow them and things like that. Now, I'm a bit of a book hoarder. If you all have watched any of my videos, you know this. I love an excuse to buy more books. So I do purchase the majority of them. And then that way I just have lots of options for us to pick and choose from. Now, compared to some of the other Guest Hollow courses we've done, I do feel like there is a good number of heavy reading assignments in this course. There are some longer novels. There are also some nonfiction books that are pretty dense reading or pretty mature reading. They might not be appropriate for a younger student or a student who is a struggling reader, but if you have a student who can read more complex information and grasp it well, the books list won't be an issue. They do provide information about that in that schedule of the books, where they tell you which books they feel would be more appropriate for a more mature student, which ones might be a bit of a tougher read, and which ones would be a little bit easier or appropriate for a younger student. So you don't have to go and buy all of the books to find out that information. They do provide that for you. It's just very thorough in that regard. But one thing that did was require me to be very selective in which books we did each week. As much as I would love to have my son do all of the different books that are recommended, I did have to pick and choose. Some weeks I would pick lighter books that were a quicker read or a more lighthearted read, and other weeks I would pick books that I knew were going to be a bit of a tougher read, ones that were just going to take him longer. Occasionally I had to take what the recommended number of pages or chapters were in a day, and I had to spread that out further. And on top of that, we found some topics where we were just really interested in them. We wanted to spend more time than just 1 week on a topic, and so we would extend that out and cover it over 2 weeks. Or in the case of like Rome, we studied it for almost 3, simply because he was really engaged with that topic. The books were great. We didn't really want to skip anything, and he was doing activities, he was watching the videos, and it just pushed things out. And probably my biggest like suggestion, or how I would go back and do this again, would be to do this course over 2 years. We did the Guest Hollow Geography or Cultures in Geography course his freshman year, and that is a great course. Great course. If I had to go back in time, I would have him do that course in 8th grade. We had done a BJU US history in 8th grade, and I would have just moved geography and cultures and done that in 8th grade. I feel like that's a course that you can manage to get done in a year. It was a great introduction to how Guest Hollow works, and a lot of fun topics in that. It gets you ready for starting to understand the world now, and then, you know, you can move into the history. And I would have taken world history and I would have spread it out over his freshman and sophomore year. Kind of done it as an early world history and a later world history, something along that line. Simply to allow us to have more time to dive into all of these different resources and books and videos, and just take our time with it and not feel like we have to cut things out. So in retrospect, that is what I would do. And then I would move on and I would do their US History Year 1 and US History Year 2, 11th and 12th grade years. But I can't change it now. We are going to go ahead and we'll probably extend out our school year by 2 to 3 weeks in order to get as much of this curriculum done as we can before we kind of call it for the summer. And I'm hoping that we can get through all of it. But we are also getting ready to hit some really fascinating periods of time as we get into quarter 4. We're going to be discussing World War I and World War II and the Industrial Age. He's reading about Victorian era. I mean, there's just a lot of interesting topics that are coming up in this last quarter of the curriculum. And I just know, we're going to find ourselves slowing down on it again. So, retrospect, if you can, spread it out over 2 years. You will love having that extra time to really dive into all of these topics and activities. Now, I did talk with my son a bit about the types of books that I've had him read this year from the curriculum and what his thoughts are on it. He prefers to read things in shorter bursts. For example, if the assignment is to read, 30 pages one day, he's probably going to get through about 15 and then want a break or want to stop and pick it up later. And that has, again, led me to have to kind of readjust how some things are scheduled, especially if there's a longer book that I really wanted him to read. There were other books, though, where he was just super engaged in what he was reading. He got through them very quickly. They just presented the information in a way that he really enjoyed. Largely, this was the Horrible Histories books that were included in the curriculum and the graphic novels. So Horrible Histories is a book series, and there were several of them that he read over the course of the year. I have a couple of the titles written down here. He read The Awesome Egyptians, The Terrible Tudors, The Celts and All That, and The Groovy Greeks. He's also doing I believe it's called the Nathan Hale series, but he'll be reading Blades of Freedom, and then he has one coming up called Guts and Glory, and I don't think that's a Nathan Hale book, but it kind of reminds me of how these horrible history books read. I really liked them. He really liked them. Typically, one of those books would be assigned, and he was simply told to just get it read over the course of the week, and he might get it read in 2 days. I believe it's because of how the information is presented in those books. It's in little chunks, like a page or two on an interesting topic, and then it jumped to another topic. And that just worked really well for how his mind works as far as getting little bits of information in short bursts. He just enjoyed those books. They were fun. They had a lot of good information. I read them right along with him, and I found them enjoyable as well. They also would work well if you are having some of your younger students do this course along with your older students, because the information is easy enough for them to read and understand, but also, again, very, very thorough. Another book that he really enjoyed was called 24 Hours in Ancient Rome. So again, we went through this when we were studying Rome. That was the one time period where we really extended out our study of it. It takes you through what life was like for different people in different jobs and positions in Rome. So everything from a slave to a senator to a soldier to a baker to like an ironsmith. Like there were different people presented in each chapter, and you read basically what their life was like over the course of a day. So it was a really interesting book and gave a lot of different perspectives about life in Roman times. Graphic novel wise, there were some really good ones. One of the earliest graphic novels he read was the version of Beowulf. I felt like this was a wonderful way to present Beowulf. Beowulf is written in kind of that older English. Even the translations of it can be kind of hard to follow. My daughter actually read a more traditional version of Beowulf for her literature course that she's doing this year, and she really just had a hard time getting through that story. She said it was kind of a tough read. But on the flip side, the graphic novel version had obviously tons of illustrations and really took him through the story. He quite liked that. He did a series of graphic novels about the history of China. I don't remember all of the titles off my top of my head, but I'll post the pictures up here. But it went through early Chinese history and into the development of modern China. So that was presented as a graphic novel. And before I forget, there were two other things about the books that I wanted to mention. First of all, there are a couple of resource books that are on the book list, and some of them are rated a little bit higher. For example, they have History of the World Map by Map that's rated at a 1 or 2, and History in 1,000 Objects 2 to 3. I do have all of these resource books, but I can tell you that we have not used them much at all this year. And it's usually just a time thing. I will mark the pages that are on the schedule for that week, and I will have those books out for him to be able to check and look at. And he will, briefly glance at them or flip through them. But he just simply hasn't had the time to sit there and really dive into those pages in depth. We've simply had them out as a resource as he's able to get to them. They also are some of the more expensive books in the course, those bigger, DK or Smithsonian books. So if you are trying to pick and choose what you feel is going to be most beneficial to the course, I would probably have skipped purchasing the resource books and instead put my budget more towards some of the other books throughout the year. The other thing with the books is that there are several fiction books that go along with the different time periods. He read a book called Language of Fire, which was a sort of a darker retelling of the Joan of Arc story, but it's still a great book. And there was another book called The Last Kingdom, and that's a part of a book series, and I believe it was made into a TV show not too long ago as well, maybe on like Netflix or something like that. And they're interesting books. They're good reads. And sometimes within the schedule, if there is an online novel study or free kind of like question packet you can get that goes along with the novel, they will link that right there in the schedule. I think it would be really interesting to take some of those novels that you're reading for history and then use them for English literature as well. Kind of two birds, one stone. As you're reading the novel for the history course, maybe you're doing the questionnaires for literature for that grade or writing a paper about it for literature and writing. And that is an approach that as we move into next year, I think we will be exploring more, trying to find novels that fit not only with a history course, but also would work out well for a literature course. Overall, I love this course. I'm a big fan of pretty much everything we've done from Guest Hollow, but the topics and the way that they were approached in this course have just been so well done. The book list is amazing. The video options are very unique and varied. It's not the same thing over and over again. There are different types of things that are presented in different ways. The list of projects is extensive, and I appreciate that it's not just craft, 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 craft. There's a lot of different things to choose from, so I can find things that will interest my son versus what might be interesting for a different student at a different age. So we have been very happy with it. As far as how I've been grading it, again, I've been grading the workbook, I've been giving him credit for the projects, and then I've been grading the narration journal. I haven't written tests, I haven't written quizzes. I've simply been looking for him to show me that he is learning from it and that he is gaining understanding from it. And that is more important to me than whether he can memorize particular names and dates and places. So I would definitely still give this course a 5-star rating. It is great. Just be prepared that if you're going to try to do it in a year, you're going to have to cut some things out. But if you can make it happen, spread it out over 2 years and just really get into everything that you want to enjoy from that curriculum. Now, before we move on to discussing my daughter's course, let me tell you a little bit more about today's video sponsor, History by Mail. This is a monthly subscription service that I came across this past year and have really enjoyed incorporating both in the history course that my son is taking, but also in the government course that my daughter is doing. Each month, I receive a replica of a historical letter or document pertaining to U.S. history. Now, not only do we get a copy of the document itself, we also get an additional page that provides information about the author of that document. If it's a letter, who was receiving it, and how does that work into the whole events of the time, essentially giving us information about the context of when this document was created and what was going on. History by Mail will offer an engaging exploration of different themes within U.S. history, occasionally giving insights for things beyond the U.S. borders. The themes will rotate every 4 letters, and you'll get a comprehensive understanding of topics such as historic inventions, the American wars, and foreign diplomatic relations. It's also something that would work well for multiple different ages. So if you have younger students who are maybe doing family style learning along with your older students, you could really present this to them each month and have students of all ages get something different from it. And the documents themselves are beautiful. You can see here a couple of examples of the ones that we have gotten over the past few months. It's just been another extra resource we can add into our history studies, and it's given us so much great information. If you would like to check out History by Mail and try it out in your homeschool, you can use my discount code. I will put that up on the screen here, but it is Abby10, and that will get you 10% off your purchase from their website. So be sure to check out History by Mail. I will have them linked down below in the description box for you, along with that savings code. Now, my 11th grader is doing a combination course from Guest Hollow. This is their Government Econ Personal Finance course. If you've watched past videos, you know that I have just been raving about this course and how much we have enjoyed it. And hands down, it's my favorite course I've had her do in high school. It is the most thorough introduction I have seen to how our government works, with such a deep explanation of our Constitution, the different branches of government, how they interact, our state governments, and that relationship between the federal government and state government, how different laws and amendments to the Constitution have come to be and how they have impacted things. The government portion of the course is covered not only in the additional books and the videos, but the online textbook. So you get access to the online textbook, and that just covers government. All of the reading assignments on there are about government, and then they correlate to assignments, again, in a workbook that you can print out. I've printed out the workbook and I've spiral bound it. And again, it fits with each week. So if she's reading week 1 on this topic in the workbook, it'll say week 1 in that subtopic, and she knows to answer those particular questions. Similar to what happened with my son with his world history and how there were questions that said think but don't answer, there are those types of questions as well in the workbook. And those I would, again, use as prompts in her narration journal. So just like her brother, she does a once a week narration entry where I put a prompt in there and then she has to answer it. And if there's not a question in that week's workbook assignments that I feel would make a good prompt, I find other sources of inspiration, typically from the books that she's reading. The economics portion of this course is covered through the additional book selections and the different videos. That's largely where Econ is covered. She's read books like the Cartoon Introduction to Macroeconomics and the Cartoon Introduction to Microeconomics. She read an online free textbook, and it was called Lessons for the Young Economist. Now that was a bit of a tough document to read. It's very much a college level economics book. So it did take a bit of time for her to get through that. But again, she's a strong reader. She has good reading comprehension, and I felt she could handle that. I believe since this course initially launched, they have provided on the schedule an alternative. If that book is simply too heavy for your student, there is another suggestion of something you can do instead. The personal finance topics are covered through additional reading and through videos, as well as quite a few hands-on projects. In fact, the majority of the hands-on projects are related to personal finance. She has read books such as Financial Peace, Revisited by Dave Ramsey, The Money Challenge for Teens. She has watched a lot of different videos about financing and budgeting. And then there are activities such as making at-home versions or budget versions of different recipes, how to make your own yogurt, make your own granola, how to sew different things. There are just a variety of different projects designed to teach you ways to save money by doing things yourself at home or doing them in a less expensive way. Now, one thing that I did discover as we were going through this course is that there is a lot of logical thinking that is introduced. There is a deep dive into different types of fallacies and different types of arguments. She's read a book called The Fallacy Detective, and then watched a whole series of videos throughout the year introducing these different fallacies and explaining what they are. I have felt that there was enough information related to logic and logical thinking to give her a half credit in logic, in addition to the full credit she's getting for both government, econ, and personal finance. So she's getting 3.5 credits from one course. That was not something I was expecting. It's something that I kind of discovered as we were going through the course, and I want to give credit where credit is due. So truly, they could market this as a government, econ, personal finance logic course. It's got all of the pieces. Another thing that we have really utilized a lot are the iCivics assignments. Each week, again, with the hands-on activities you can choose from, there are links to different iCivics assignments. iCivics is a website, and you sign up kind of as a teacher, and it's free to access. But the different lessons will have teacher resources and student resources. Typically, I don't bother printing off the teacher resources. I just look at them in order to see the answers for things, but I will print off the student documents, and they will be on different topics related to what she's studying on the government side of things. Recently, she was assigned one about Supreme Court nominations and the whole process. There was one on Supreme Court opinions. Some of it will be information where she's reading and then directly answering questions, but there are quite a few where she has to give her opinion or make a judgment based on the information that's given. There was an assignment about state laws, looking at what various states say about a particular issue and how the laws vary state to state, and then her making or forming an opinion on which she feels is the best route to go, which law does she feel would best protect the rights of the citizens, but also protect the general public. I mean, it really gets her thinking about those types of topics. So I've really liked the iCivics assignments. They're often more recommended for a week than what we can do. I will usually pare it down and just pick 2 each week and have her do them, usually on like Tuesday and Thursday. And that will be something that I grade along with her narration journal and with her workbook pages. Now, another component included in this curriculum is the option to print out their vocabulary cards. It prints out on a page, and then it's designed to where you can fold the paper in half and then cut and have 2-sided vocabulary cards. There'll be terms from the government pages that you're reading in the textbook, and then there are ones where it will talk about the Latin root of different terms, which there are quite a few of when it comes to our government. And I did use these for about the first 7 or 8 weeks. I printed them off as she would start a new chapter in the online textbook, and I would have her just kind of flip through them just to review the terms. But we did move away from that. I don't know. If there had been a vocabulary quiz that we could have given her or a vocabulary test, I might have been a bit more consistent with using them, but there aren't any tests or quizzes that are included with the curriculum. That might be something if somebody's feeling particularly ambitious and wants to create some vocabulary quizzes, would be a great resource to maybe share with other users of this course in the future. If I ever have some spare time, maybe I'll put something together. But we did kind of abandon using the vocabulary cards, but they are a component that were included in the course. Another thing that I have enjoyed with this is, again, the book selections. I always enjoyed the book selections. Some of the top books, ones that I thought were really great and that she thought were really great. One of the early books she read was called Whatever Happened to Penny Candy. This was a look at money and inflation and the change in the value of the dollar and kind of why that happens over time. It's such a straightforward, easy read that takes what can be a complicated concept in economics and makes it really easy to understand. I really enjoyed reading that book. She went through that book super fast. It was just a great one to include. She also had The People's Guide to the U.S. Constitution. She read that in bits and pieces over the course of several weeks. It took you through the entire Constitution along with explanations. I felt that that was critical for a government course. You ought to read the Constitution if you're studying government. The Fallacy Detective was another great one. Again, that was one that tied into the logic component of this course. And I really appreciated how it presented the different types of fallacies and arguments that you will see. The Cartoon Guides to Macroeconomics and Microeconomics, I thought gave a good explanation of things. She's not super into really like cartoony illustrated books. That's not really her jam. She almost would prefer kind of the regular reads, but she's been going through them and I feel like they are giving good information. That's just giving it in a different format than what she's used to. When we got to discussion of the Great Depression and how the federal government reacted to that, she got a chance to read a book from each kind of side of the aisle, or the two different views on that. You know, there are those who feel like the way that the government handled the Great Depression and instituted the New Deal was great. And there are those who feel like that was government overreach. So she read two different books. One was called Crash and one was called The Politically Incorrect Guide to the Great Depression. So it gave you both viewpoints on this one major thing that the government did, the New Deal. And again, that really worked on that whole logical thinking, that whole idea of taking information from both sides, from the two different arguments, absorbing it, and then making a decision on what you think about it after you've absorbed all of this information. So I really appreciated that it was taking something from the past and giving her that chance to practice listening to both sides of the argument and then making her own decisions. Just like with the World History course, there were also some books that were listed strictly as reference books. They were ranked kind of lower on the book list and simply were supposed to be things that were good to have on hand. The two books in particular were the economics book and How Money Works. I actually have had her do the reading assignments from these two books. all throughout the year. And in fact, she will continue reading through those books until the end of the year. It's only 1 to 3 pages from one or the other of those 2 books each day. So it's not anything super heavy, but it's given good information in different types of formats. There are some infographics on there and some diagrams that really help to explain the concepts that are being discussed and give you just kind of a good visualization of those topics. I have felt that they have been 2 of the most valuable reference books that I purchased this year in terms of how often we've used them and the quality of the information that they're presenting. So while they are ranked a bit lower on that book list, I do feel like they were worth the money that I spent to have them on hand. One of the biggest things I came to realize with this course is that I really needed to treat it as more than one course when I was looking at her overall course load. When I initially decided what all we were going to have her do this year, I really just kind of placed it on her calendar as if it was just one class. You know, you're going to sit and spend a certain amount of time on this one course, even though this one course is worth so many different credits. In reality, I really should have probably cut another elective from her from this year, and then that would have given her more time for this course. It's worth at least 3 full credits. So I should have scheduled it as if it were 2 or 3 courses in terms of how much of her day it is taking up. While you could pare it down and simply do the bare bones and still get good information, why pick such a rich course with so many resources if you're not going to utilize all of the pieces possible? And that is something that I wish I had thought about at the start of the year, and I should have known better. I've done enough courses from Gus Howell to know that I should have scheduled her some more time. So that makes her days a little bit longer. Some days, for example, she might have a reading assignment in the textbook, and the way that the schedule lays it out, she's supposed to read it over 2 days, but we're having to push it into one in order for her to have time to do another reading assignment or an iCivics assignment or hands-on project. And if I had given her more time each day or a bigger bulk of the time set aside for this course, we wouldn't feel like we're having to like condense things onto different days or kind of putting that pressure on her to like get through all of the assignments on a given day. Just give your student plenty of time because they are covering multiple subjects. They're covering government, they're covering economics, they're covering finance, and yes, they're also covering logic. So that would be my one suggestion, is just give your student adequate time for a course that is worth quite a few different credits. Again, I would definitely give this course 5-star review. I have just been so impressed with her level of understanding about our government and how it works, how our economy works, and key concepts. And I've been really pleased with the amount of information she's getting about different finance matters and making smart financial decisions. I think this is a perfect time in her high school education to go over these. She's an 11th grader. You could absolutely do this course as a 12th grader. In fact, I think my son will end up doing this course in 12th grade. He's just working on things at a different timetable than her. But right before leaving home is a fantastic time to make sure you have a good understanding of all of this. I also am really glad that she's getting all of this information about government and the way that our government works and the different branches and voting before she turns 18 and votes for the first time. She will have all of this information under her belt. She will have had lots of training in sound decision making, in listening to information and making her own decisions before she ever goes to the ballot box for the first time. All in all, I'm extremely pleased with how these courses are going this year. My students are engaged not only with the books, but with the videos and with the projects. Their level of understanding on these 2 subjects is so much greater than what I had when I was their age. And to me, that is just the true measure of success, that they have gone beyond what I ever learned. Are there things I would do differently? Yes, but that is only to adjust scheduling and allow us to use even more of the aspects that are included in this curriculum. If you would like to find out more details about either one of these courses, I would suggest you check out my Guest Hollow playlist down below in the description box. I have an individual video about each of these courses. I also will link Guest Hollow's website for you if you would like to check them out and find out more about their courses there. Also, be sure to check out History by Mail. I will have them linked down below in the description box. Use my code Abby10 to save yourself 10% off your purchase. It's just a wonderful addition that you can add to your homeschool resource list, something that you can share with your students of all ages. Be sure to check back in the coming weeks as I will be giving reviews of our other curriculum choices that we had. I'll have a video on our English and literature courses, our math, our science, and even our electives. So be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and I will see you guys here in the next video. Thanks again. Happy homeschooling. Bye.